Welcome everyone to the second session in the 2019 Virtual Summer School Series presented by the National Association of Extension Program and Staff Development Professionals and the Program and Staff Development Committee of the Southern Region Program Leadership Network. This webinar series is endorsed by the Joint Council of Extension Professionals. Virtual Summer School is being hosted this year by Michigan State University Extension. I'm Gwen Shealy with Michigan State University Extension, and I'm the NAEP SDP Programs Committee Co-Chair, along with Celeste Carmichael from Cornell University. We also have to thank Diane Mashburn, who is a representative from the Southern Region PLN PSD Committee for her work in helping to organize this webinar series. We are pleased to have you here with us today to learn from today's webinar, which is titled, An Innovative New Staff Orientation Experience Online. We have two presenters today, including Kimberly Fleming, who is the Professional Development and Volunteer Involvement Specialist from Cornell University, and Leslie Boby, who is the Interim Coordinator of the Southern Region Extension Forestry from University of Georgia. So with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to our first presenter today, Kimberly Fleming.
Hi, Gwen. Thanks so much. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. It's a beautiful day here in New York State. I'm on the Cornell University campus, our land-grant university for New York State. And just really honored to be part of the virtual summer series. I know I signed up for each day. I attended yesterday and have some new contacts that I want to follow up on for sure. So I welcome people to follow along and participate. I welcome your chats, your thoughts as we go along. And as Gwen said, we'll have questions at the end also. So I'm just going to make sure you can see my chat here in case you want to shout out there. This is a presentation on what we call an innovative new staff orientation experience online, and realize that we've got many esteemed colleagues from across the nation, and you may have something similar or may have some ideas to help us improve. So we're really thrilled kind of to put it out there in front of you and to continue the conversation after the presentation today. Also, if you want to explore what we have a little further and also share what you've got. So I'll be asking for some participation. I was surprised yesterday on the evaluation when the one question was, were you distracted? So very interesting as you're sitting in your office doing email or other things and listening along. But that does impact the evaluation and what you get out of the presentation. So I welcome you all here today. My role here in New York State at Cornell University within our Extension Administration offices is Professional Development and Volunteer Involvement Specialist. I'm part of our Organizational Development and Accountability team here, and actually started in Extension right out of college. I worked as a 4-H youth development educator, a 4-H animal science agent, and had a great experience. Thought I would never ever leave that. Came to Cornell to work on my master's, and ended up working with the state 4-H office for another 13 years after that, until about 2010 when I applied for a position in org development here, this professional development and volunteer involvement specialist role back in 2010. So I've been doing this for about 9 years, work with a wonderful team, and want to give credit to that team who helped develop this online course and many of the other professional development opportunities that we offer here. So credit to Celeste Carmichael, as Gwen had introduced her as the co-chair of the programs committee, who is our instructional designer here and also program development and accountability specialist. And also credit to Eduardo Gonzalez, who is a teammate here with org development, as well as our fearless leader, Sarah Dayton, who is an associate director here with Cornell Cooperative Extension, and has contributed to the support of this development of this course. I love working with new staff, and this is one of my favorite things. I always feel like I have resources to share, but more so that new staff come in with really great ideas, sources to share, And that's just something that helps me to keep learning. And I know, as I said earlier, you, my colleagues out there, have information to share too. So I look forward to your participation. What we plan to do in the next 25 minutes or so is share a little bit about the design and development of our Cooperative Extension new staff orientation online course. I'll share some of the highlights, including why we put this together, and also some of the agreements and syllabus that is part of that course. We'll look at the individual topics, or at least a general topic overview, and some of the tools that we're using to make this course available online, and then we'll take questions and answers. And I'm very happy to take questions and answers in the Q&A chat. Gwen will be watching those, but also comments in the chat, and I'm sure that will be helping me watch those also. We're going to move ahead here and do a little participation, if you would. Just take these questions one at a time, and we'll do the raise hand feature, if you would. And we'll just start with the first question. Tell me, have you ever attended an orientation to Extension? If so, please use the raise hand feature.
So right now, the number is still growing. We're at about 30.
And growing. Okay, so most of you have attended an orientation. It may have been long ago, it may have been very recently. So now what I'd like to do is look in the chat and ask you what stands out.
Yeah. Let's see here. We're getting a lot of comments.
Okay, great.
Let me scroll up so I can see it. All right, so lots of information crammed into one day.
Yes.
Overwhelming. Drinking from a fire hose.
Sounds familiar.
Meeting others that were new.
One of the highlights for sure.
Yeah. Lots of information with an exclamation point.
Mm-hmm.
The orientation was helpful to understand the breadth of extension programming.
Wonderful.
Benefits orientation.
Good
They
to know.
seem to be focused on what is important to campus or administration, not the local setting.
Interesting. Yes. Good. Yeah, that gives us a good feel for maybe some of the challenges and also some of the benefits. And we tried to, it sounds like a very common experience as we were exploring our new staff orientation experience here with Cornell Cooperative Extension, that fire hose is a common remembrance, also building those relationships, very fond remembrance of those people who maybe went through a cohort of new staff orientation. So there's definitely pluses and minuses of that face-to-face new staff orientation, and maybe some of those were even online. But I thought that might be a great place to start today. I also wanted to get a feel for how many of you actually coordinate or lead an orientation for staff online. So if we could do another raised hand, that would be wonderful.
So looks like 17, 18, 19, that's kind of where we're at.
Sounds good. And then if we could lower hands, and then how many of you actually lead an orientation for staff online?
So right now we're at about 5, and it looks like that's 5 or 6.
All right. So some of you also may be developing things or have ideas about them. Again, I welcome you to chime in as we move ahead. So I'm going to talk now about some of the design aspect, and again, credit to Celeste Carmichael, who's on the line, helped with this instructional design purpose. And we had actually attended the E-Extension Design-a-thon. Some of you may have been part of that, the regional trainings that were going around. But either way, that helped us to block out some time and think about a new staff orientation training, which we have had for years and years and years. I've actually been involved for years and years and years, the face-to-face component. And then at the time we were offering two webinars, 2 times a year to new staff. So we do a welcome to them. It was a live webinar. We get lots of our staff people here in Extension Administration, and share a 90-minute webinar, and a couple weeks later a second part 90-minute webinar, and a lot of coordination and a lot of time for those who were presenting, and also kind of a fire hose aspect. So we were thinking about new staff experience and how can we make that not so, and started with the why. So why a CC new staff experience? And we said we believe if staff are supported and connected to colleagues, to campus, because many of our staff are out around the state in local offices, and our organizational vision that they'll be empowered to contribute to Cornell Cooperative Extension system, bringing innovation and energy. So we, after some exploration and brainstorming, kind of came up with this statement that we felt we could share and also look to as a guidance as we were developing the course. We also did a little lit review, explored how our staff numbers were looking, how important is this and why is it important to our system. And just to pull out some of the numbers here, we have about 1,200 to 1,300 staff around the state of regular employees, and then temporary employees on top of that. And we were noticing that 17% of the staff are hired over 2 years. So 17% of staff are hired new over the last 2 years. This was actually 2015, 2017 numbers that we were looking at. And this was out of an average of, as I said, about 1,300, 1,200, 1,300 regular employees. And then realized that 1.79 were terminated or on leave as an average per year. So slightly higher than the state and the local education government positions of 1.4 as far as turnover there. So yes, it's important to our staff and to our system. Research also indicates that employee onboarding is a way to develop relationships between new employees and employers, also providing opportunities for staff to engage with work decisions, create a culture that helps to attract, retain strong talent, and encourage staff to participate in professional development. So this also increases staff loyalty and engagement. So that's a little bit about why that is important. How we would do it, again, more brainstorming, thinking, designing. What do we have now? What do we really want staff to get out of new staff orientation? And we really felt that when new staff participate, they would better understand the organization, gain skills and knowledge, and build sustaining relationships with colleagues and campus staff. So we have the 3 circles there equaling up to the confident, capable, supported staff. So building the relationships, creating, building the skills and the knowledge, and building the understanding of Cornell Cooperative Extension. Extension's a pretty hard organization to understand. We just had a new staff member here in the office, and he was saying, my father keeps asking what my new job is, and I need some guidance on that. So that's another important reason why to understand extension. So I'm turning the next slide. This is, again, a little bit of background and a little bit of how we were thinking about the pathway that we might send new staff. And we structured it so there's actually an online registration. We're inviting new staff to register for the new staff orientation experience. That includes the online experience. And as part of this, so they register for the online experience. They get registered for our courses actually in the Moodle platform. We talked about the Moodle platform is a learning management system like Canvas or Blackboard. So they're directed there, which is where the course is. Within the course, we have an introduction to others, to new staff orientation. And then also you kind of break up the course into 3 different parts. So the first one is learning about the CC system. And that's topics 1 through 3. Move on to topics 4 to 5 to find out more about support from the CC system. And that might be some of it professional development from us, some of it is program development from us, it's reporting, it's IT, it's finance, it's some of the support that comes from Extension administration and around the state. And then move on to topics 6 to 7, which is introduction to the program planning. So this is kind of the concept that we is evolving. It's always changing. This is one of the early guides that we put up there. Our thought is that upon completion, we would encourage new staff to be involved with mentoring or guiding others through new staff orientation. And actually, while they're part of the course, they have discussion forums and different ways they can respond to each other. So there is kind of a peer mentoring built into that. And then continue learning pathway as appropriate. So they may go on to, we still offer new staff orientation on campus, for especially program leader staff, program delivery staff, and operation and administrative leadership staff. So that might be something. If they're a supervisor, we have a supervisor course, these are all face-to-face right now. We also have a higher level program development leadership cohort that is a mix of online and face-to-face that we encourage program leaders to go through. So depending on the staff and their position, we would have them follow this and then continue the learning pathway as appropriate. So welcome to take any questions if there's anything up to now. This is kind of just giving us a little baseline and a little bit about the course. I'm going to just talk about the syllabus now. So this is a clip actually of the course syllabus, and I've shared with Gwen to be posted the actual 4-page syllabus that's here. I've also, the slide handout will be available on the conference site, the virtual summer school site, and if you contact me, we can also get you into the course if you want to explore that, if this interests you, and we'll go there in just a little bit. But just to give you an idea about the syllabus here. Again, credit to the instructors, Celeste Carmichael, Eduardo Gonzalez, my colleagues here, for helping to really put together the syllabus and the course. It really does take a village to do this sort of thing. But I do want to highlight here in the course, on the course syllabus, you'll see a course description, and we'll also see the outcomes that are mentioned. We really are looking for staff to make connections administratively and with programmatic resources and contacts here on campus. So we built that in, but also that they'll be able to find resources that relate to understanding the organization, the policies and procedures, support from Extension administration, also looking at opportunities for professional and personal development, and looking at connecting to Cornell's campus, as well as expectations of Cornell Cooperative Extension programs. So we do spell those outcomes there. We also are planning that new staff would be able to explain Cornell Cooperative Extension, as they need to do that, obviously. They'll be able to locate resources and policy and procedures that are specific to the system. Quite often new staff don't come in understanding that right away. They'll also be able to identify professional development opportunities, especially within the first 6 months, and then connecting with others, being able to make some connections within the course and other resources there. So this is the syllabus, and again, that's available for you to look at further as we go. One part of the syllabus is the working agreement. So if you haven't worked with working agreements before, these are really those guidelines or agreements as you're getting together in a group on kind of laying out the guidelines for working together. So you'll see some of them as part of our working agreement is an inclusivity statement, which we have spelled out in our syllabus, where we agree to share unique experiences, values, and beliefs, be open to the views of others, honor the uniqueness of colleagues. Sometimes we call them ground rules, and you typically set these up with the group that we're meeting with. Online, we've set those up ahead of time just so it's clear, appreciate learning from each other, value each other's opinions with respect. So kind of the ground rules. So Gwen, how are people using working agreements?
I would say the majority are not using a working agreement. However, some have mentioned coming up with norms for the group, or calling them meeting norms or a group agreement that they come up in their face-to-face orientation. So those are, or ground rules is another one that someone mentioned.
Absolutely. Great. Okay, thanks for all those responses. Another part of our working agreement in the syllabus that's not on the slide are assumption and participation guidelines. So we say ahead of time that we're going to be available to people. So communication with the course instructors, people may reach out to us, we'll respond by email within the next 24 hours, depending on holidays and all of that. We do encourage online etiquette, because sometimes as people get online, they get a little, sometimes the respect level may not be there, and encourage communication also. And then, so we try to lay that out ahead of time to prevent the challenges that might happen in the course. So we'll move ahead here. So here's an actual snip of the online course. I've got a, and I'll just explain some of this. I'm not sure if we'll have time to go on to, actually onto the course, but you can tell me that, Gwen. It looks like maybe about 5 minutes left.
Yeah, about 5 minutes is about right.
Okay, so this is a snip of the course, introducing CC new staff online here. We have set it up with an explanation and a welcome in the beginning. You'll see a highlight here. New staff orientation on campus course page actually takes staff to the page where they may look into the 2-day or 3-day on-campus opportunity for staff. We have a place for announcements where we can enter information in there that goes out to everyone who's actually registered in the course. Speaking of registration, you'll see a reminder up here in the right-hand corner that everyone should log in. This course is actually on our staff page, so only staff from Cornell may enter into it, so use your regular net ID and your password to get in. Having some challenges as people were getting in the other course and remembering passwords and tracking all of that. So now it's easy for new staff to click, and they can enter their regular net ID as they do for their email, and they can get into the course. And they're reminded to log in each time so they can get credit for all the work that they do. So announcements are always posted there, but they're also going into their email automatically. Then we have a PDF down here under announcements with frequently asked questions for new staff, including what other professional development opportunities might they attend, or it may be when you come to campus, where do you park? So some of those details, and how do I explain Cornell Cooperative Extension? So there's some structure built into that, really handy little quick, lots of pictures and things. And then as I talked about the online syllabus, it's right here at the front of the page. Just to talk a little bit about the topics, there's 7 different topics in our online course right now, and there's other things that we'd like to add on to that. Each topic in particular has an overview. You'll see this topic 5 here with personal and professional development, a little overview of what they're going to find in there. Each topic has materials to either read, to scroll, to share. You see that here with diversity, equity, inclusion topic 2. And review, we define ahead of time, really means to scan the resources, look for what's useful to them. Scroll, kind of look through, look at the courses and the resources, and then there's also an engagement for each of the topics, at least one where they have a discussion forum or maybe do a video response. You'll see we use Flipgrid here, which is, if you haven't looked into that, take a look at that. It's a way to actually have a video discussion. So some of you may have been involved with that. And then there's a knowledge check. So little quiz to just check yourself to see if you've got the basic information. And then in the right-hand corner, I have the latest badge, copy of a badge for one of the topics. So they're posted right on the online Moodle. So kind of a neat way to help people track. As I said, we talk a little bit about the challenges, and it's really, this was really a rewrite of what we have been doing for a long time. So really making time for visioning and design. So I give some credit back to the design-a-thon again of the extension, kind of making space, and then to our team who really helped to keep things moving in the right direction and be accountable to each other, so we could have time where it doesn't seem like an urgent thing, but making time for that design and realizing what we want and really rebuilding what we wanted. Another challenge is automating the communication and promotion. This is within the Moodle course. The Moodle platform, as I said, so making sure that people are moving through that. And when we have a big number, actually we have about 150 that are in the Moodle course right now. A few of those have gone through and completed, and some were part of the pilot also, but making sure that we're reaching out, tracking what people are doing, and communicating with them to keep them going in spirit and interested in the course, tracking who's completed and making sure supervisors know about that, because we have 55 different local offices that are happening around New York State, and then finding a platform that really gets support by all. And we've had a lot of success with Moodle, but not always, not everyone is real happy with it. Sometimes it can be a little clunky, especially when you're first learning about it. Another challenge is prioritizing and streamlining the content. So I was looking for the group. I think we have time for this question, and looking to ask you, how do you make time for redesigning programs, or do you make time for redesigning programs, or thinking about what you really want in professional development? So just wondering if people could share how they build that into their regular, very busy extension schedules.
Well, we have some responses to your question here about making time for visioning and design.
Great, I'm going to take notes. Thank you.
All right, so one comment is many conversations. So that's how they go about it. Another comment is that it's definitely a challenge, but they have quarterly team meetings.
Nice.
Another person says they're kind of starting from scratch, but they see themselves as a facilitator of many groups to move staff development forward.
Yeah.
And well, this person just started last Thursday, so
oh, okay. Wow.
So constantly tweaking curriculum, and when they have a critical mass of people, thinking about the overhaul, creating a committee to inform changes and gain buy-in.
Yep, that's great.
Yeah. So one question is, do you have people check a box when they agree with a working agreement? This person has kind of a principles that they follow, but they do not have a formal agreement that someone would check or sign.
I think not with the syllabus. We have that posted. I don't believe we have a checkbox for that one.
Okay.
We do have checkboxes to track, so people can track as they go through the topics. So if they watch a video, some checkboxes happen automatically. If they if they are reviewing or scanning something, kind of following a list of things to do, sometimes they have to self-check that. But I don't believe we've done that for the working. That's a great idea, though.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And do people go through as a cohort? How do the discussion logistics function?
That's great. Actually, our pilot was cohorts that were attending our last fall face-to-face events. So that was the way we evaluated and kind of tweaked the course for everyone else. But what our purpose is really to get new staff in the course as soon as possible. So every month we're welcoming new staff, and they can register and get in. I do have monthly repeated webinars of introduction to the course so people can jump on. So I've had 10 to 25 actually on those live webinars, kind of getting the lay of the land before they jump in. Some jump right into the course, but currently it's not a cohort, but there are discussion forums within.
Okay, perfect. Have you compared the effectiveness of online training versus face-to-face?
We haven't. As I said, we had a small group looking at this new staff online course, the new revision of it back in the fall. So we had 2 face-to-face courses. We spent a lot of time with them, but we haven't really done the follow-up on the effectiveness beyond the knowledge checks.
Okay.
But definitely something we need to. And mostly looking at research also.
Okay. Yeah. One last kind of comment here. When this person came into the role, they'd been in the role about 2.5 years. They created competencies that informed a new evaluation, and they started working on facilitator notes to cross-train more instructors.
Oh, that's great. Yes, we've got an framework for professional development that we've kind of been guiding our team to highlight areas, but that's a great idea. All right, and then just sharing some lessons learned is, as we said, we need to make time for visioning and redesign, and really people, our extension staff, none of us really have a lot of extra time, so we need to have the real courses that are drawing people in, and we don't really have a lot of ability to require require courses, so we really have to have a real engaging and inviting, and we want to anyways, course to draw people in and keep them with us and working with us. So really making that time to redesign, especially as we're going online. Or a mix of online is important. And then that group, those committee, those ideas that were shared by everyone, making it group work, setting up committees, lots and lots of discussions, definitely is an effective way to move forward this design process and coming up with strategies. So those design strategies that a group can decide on really helps to communicate to the larger group or to get support for time or funds to create courses. Also, working with the new staff or whatever the audience may be for the online course is was crucial to us, and we really appreciate everybody who is involved. And as easy access as possible. If you can click a link and get in, that's wonderful. If they can use a password and log in that's familiar, that's great too. Organization and really having a diversity of mediums within the online course are things that our new staff have told us are really appreciated, and you'll also find that in reading. And then clarifying how to go through the course. As I said earlier, we've recommended there's places where we say review or scan, and places where we say really dig into this piece. And it's going to depend on the individual, but it's just to make the navigation easier. And then each activity really needs meaning and purpose. We had a few things, I don't remember the exact activity, but our new staff said, why do you have this in here? It's just really busy work for us, so take that out. So we've tried to streamline as much as possible, and then having that check off, as we were talking about earlier, for activities to help new staff kind of track themselves and also help us track on the other side. So those are some of the lessons that we learned. The next staff is just contributors, so thank you again to my colleagues and all the new staff that have gone through. Also to our IT group, who's really have been looking at our, especially our distance education specialist, Paul Treadwell, who's been exploring this Moodle platform for us and supporting that and really teaching a lot of great things. So don't be afraid to explore new technology and find the experts there, because I'm certainly not that. So that's my presentation. Okay.
There was one question that came in. Celeste helped to answer it, but I just want to read it to make sure everyone hears it. The question was, who is the audience for this orientation? Does it include support staff, extension specialists, or people with split time? And Celeste answered that it is for all new staff from temps to professionals.
Absolutely. Yep, we wanted something that everybody could be part of things, and we realized that as new staff go through the course, they're going to maybe focus on different things if they have different responsibilities, but definitely for all staff.
Perfect.
Thank you, everybody.
So my name is Leslie Boby. I'm the interim coordinator for Southern Regional Extension Forestry. And we are a shop that is based at the University of Georgia, but we serve the we serve the region in terms of extension, focused on forestry and a little bit on natural resources. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a program we called Seeding Success, which the full name is on that logo. But it's a national onboarding program for forestry and natural resources. It's an online program. Just to take you through what we're going to talk about, I'm just going to capture a couple of your experiences, talk a little bit about forestry and natural resources extension, discuss how the course kind of came along, show you a little video and kind of provide more details about the course and the evaluation and the next steps. So I have a question for you guys. I was going to ask, how many years have you worked in extension outreach? So A would be 0 to 1 year, B 2 to 5 years, and so on. So this group is probably higher up in extension, so it's a little bit more biased. So I guess we have one person who's 0 to 1 year, but we do have about a quarter of the group has only been around for 2 to 5 years. Another 10% have only been around for 6 to 10 years. So we can see that demographics are changing right now in extension. I'm going to close the poll. We'll do one more poll. Oh, sorry. So how many people have retired in your office in the last 2 years? I just picked 2 years just to give it a goal. Okay, so at least 40% of the group has had one person retire in their office in the last 2 years. 7% have had 5 people retire in the last 2 years. 20% have had 4 people retire in the last 2 years. You can see we've got a lot of retirements coming up. And of course, these offices vary in size, but when you're looking at 3 to 5 people retiring within a short period of time, that's going to have an effect on the office. So, okay, so just to tell you a little bit about the history of this program and how it developed. In 2017, I believe it was, 2016 or 2015, there was a National Forestry and Wood Products Extension Conference in Cocodrie, Louisiana, and there was a whole paper that they developed on that. But during that meeting, there was a big discussion about, about the future of forestry extension and about some of the different issues we're facing. And so this program kind of came out of that meeting. And what they identified at that meeting as well was some of the challenges for extension forestry and natural resources. And, I am in extension forestry specifically, but this was also focused on this kind of area because sometimes areas like 4-H or agriculture might have a little bit more resources directed at them, or they might have more clarity of function, but forestry and natural resources can be a little bit, forestry is small in extension, and then natural resources can be all over the place. So that was why we chose to focus on this area. But overall for extension, we know that there's been reduced funding from state and federal sources. So, we have a high load, but capacity is reduced a little bit. We know there's a lot of retirements coming up. So already there's been a lot of retirements in a lot of offices, and they keep on coming. So the baby boomers are starting to relax and go to Jimmy Buffett's and Margaritaville and all that. So we're losing a lot of people. There's also a lot of challenges that are coming up for forestry and natural resources. So, when people started in their career a while ago, they might have had a traditional problem with a real A to B answer, and it was much easier to solve. And not that they were all easier to solve, but now we're looking at a lot more wicked problems where it requires a lot of resources, a lot of partnerships, and it's just very complex. We're also looking at challenges from climate change, which definitely affect forestry and natural resources. And we have an urbanizing population that may not be as connected to forestry and natural resources either. So that also changes the demographics. So we wanted to create a national forestry and natural resources extension onboarding program to address this. And some of the things we wanted to focus on was the loss of institutional knowledge and mentors. So again, from that meeting in Louisiana, there was a lot of identification of how when some of the people in the room had started 25, 30 years ago, the capacity for extension forestry at their university was much higher. So if someone left at that time, they were replaced, and there just were a lot of positions overall. But we've lost a lot of those. We've lost some of those positions, and the capacity has shrunk. And so now when you lose 1 or 2 people, you're looking at a significant loss of institutional knowledge. And also as these programs have shrunk, then there's not the availability for mentorship within your own university or your own state. So for example, each state might have one forest economist doing extension work. And so they're not going to be able to find a mentor within the state. They need to look elsewhere to be able to connect to someone who can help mentor them in their specific area. We also found that training programs may not be available, or they're mixed quality. This program where we have a focus on extension specialists all the way down to agents and assistants and whoever. And sometimes the specialists may not get connected to training programs as much as they should. I think agents a lot of times will have more of a focused onboarding program, but sometimes specialists don't take advantage of it, or it may not be available. So that's part of the reason for this national program. So to develop this program, we applied for a Renewable Resources Extension Act grant from NIFA, which we were funded for, and that helped fund the development of this program. So the course design. If you're looking at a national program, then you can't just develop it in one office or one university. It needs a lot of input. So we cast a wide net, and we put together a team that included, you can just see the spread of people, but we had people from New Hampshire, Oregon, Minnesota, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Fort Valley in Georgia, Kentucky, and so on. So we tried to get a wide variety of people to contribute to this course and help develop it. We also did a needs assessment in winter 2017, 2018. And so one of the things you can see from this needs assessment I've put here is that there's a wide spread of ages in terms of how many people have worked for how many years in extension. But you can see that about 20% of the people who responded to this needs assessment had been working for less than 5 years. And another 7 or 8% have been working for about past 6 to 10 years. So we're looking at a lot of new people coming in. And these, of course, are the people who responded, so it might be a little bit more biased in terms of who was interested to respond. And we did have a little over 100 responses, and 45 completed the whole needs assessment as well. We also were able to gauge some more information on our on the people who might be interested, and we use this pre-course evaluation as well, just to kind of find out who's interested in what are they working on, what areas. So we did find a range of people responding, from assistant professors to full professors, extension assistants and extension associates, and then other, which captures a lot of different categories. And you can see there's you can see the percentage of people working in each area that is listed. And a lot of people work in multiple areas, but this, we were able to hit people from forestry, natural resources, water resources, sea grant and coastal, community development, and so on, were connected to our survey. And we found that almost 50% had no onboarding training, which is really interesting. So that confirmed the fact that there was a need for this course. So the course design. What I've always presented it as what you don't know that you don't know. So when people start an extension, especially when you're looking at extension specialists, they're specialists in a content area, and they might know all about forest health, but they have no idea about how to deliver programs or what forest landowners are like. They are, got a PhD in civic science, and their dissertation was on evaluating and measuring that science. So this course was designed just to capture the things that you just didn't know that you didn't know. One of the things that we came up with to make this course more interesting was we thought about recording interviews. And there was a meeting of the Association of Natural Resource Extension Professionals last spring. And so we took that opportunity to record a bunch of interviews with people and see what advice they would give for new extension people. And I'm going to share a little snippet of the video from that. And we recorded interviews with, I believe it was like 35 people in all. And we were able to use then the video snippets for some of the sessions. And then we made this promo video to kind of put it all together.
I think the first thing that I would recommend is that they really watch and listen and learn and not jump in with both feet until they really know what is going on.
A good plan is to keep your ears open, listen, ask good questions, and don't be too fast to give answers.
Nobody comes into Extension knowing exactly how to proceed. Nobody does. I don't care what anybody says.
Extension is different. It's a different type of atmosphere from being in the research or teaching department. So embrace that. Don't shy away from it.
It's really important if you need help, if you need answers, not help, but if you need some guidance, that you go ask.
I usually ask some advice, and they usually are really helpful. I mean, they provide a pretty useful and informative guidelines and helpful. So those are really, really useful for me to get it in the right track, as well as to develop and maintain my programs and develop new programs in extension forestry.
The key is, and it came out in some of the conference here, is to make sure that you're listening to those individuals that you're serving. Just sit back and absorb some of the information that they share before you start to react.
So you don't need to be a know-it-all. Sometimes we just need to be more of
a good listener than a good talker.
We're strongly and fiercely independent, and so you should be, because Extension expects us to do things on our own, to plan our own events, to do our own budgeting, to do all of those things. But at some point we have to stop and say, I can ask for help. People are willing to help me. Extension is fabulous for helping, but you have to ask.
So the videos ended up being very interesting, and we got a lot of great information from them and a lot of snippets that we're able to use for some of the different sessions. It ended up being fairly meaningful too, because we had a lot of interesting reflection. And one of the things that turned out well was I recorded most of the videos. I'm not a videographer. I don't have any particular talent in it. And we only had just a room at a hotel, because even where we were, there was no room outside, and it still turned out pretty well given those limitations. So something I would recommend for anyone, because capturing some of those comments is very helpful. And let me go on here. So the course. All right, so the course we ended up doing, we developed 8 modules, and we covered it over 13 sessions. We had originally planned this to be an online course, but we thought about doing it as a live version so that we could kind of test it out and then also see what, just see if there was anything we could improve from those evaluations. Hold on a second. Okay. So we also developed pre and post course evaluation. So we had an immediate pre-course evaluation to find out who our audience would be and who would be attending. And then we asked people who were contributing to each different module to provide some resources that people could use later. And we tried to create a cohort so we could connect people, since we had this opportunity to offer it live once, because after this, it's just going to be turned into like a Moodle online learning thing. So that, well, maybe there's an opportunity to connect people while we're doing this live version. We developed learning objectives for each module. So we identify what we cover and who would cover it. Each module had multiple speakers. And we had module leaders who then were able to invite others to contribute, or we were able to, as a larger planning group, find others to contribute as well. So the first module was just a general onboarding and getting started in forestry and natural resources, and a little bit of history and orientation to what Extension is, and Extension, the history of how it started and where everything kind of came from with the natural resources forestry focus. The second module focused on networks and mentors, and the importance of mentors, how to develop a mentor, what to look for, all those types of things. In the third module, which is presented in 2 parts, we looked at audiences and needs assessments, and included just some best methods for assessing needs, as well as some case studies on connecting with underserved landowners, and another case study from Oregon State University and an evaluation or needs assessment they had done. The fourth module was programming development and delivery, and that focused on a lot on basic extension delivery methods, and just kind of explaining the basics of program development and what those things are and how you define targeted outcomes. Module 5 was evaluation and impact, and I think this modules 3, 4, and 5 were especially critical for a lot of people because they hadn't had much training in this. So this was just covering a lot of the different things that you need to report. And I think if you don't get some training on evaluation impact, and you're asked to report in an extension, we're always asked to report data. This can be very critical to how you do it. The 6th module was extension scholarship. And again, the audience for this is extension specialists through agents and everyone. But there were some discussions about promotion and tenure and everything, because especially those who are, for those who are specialists, there's some considerations and things you need to know in order to go through tenure. So that, in that module was a panel discussion. And module 7 focused on ways to find financial support and where to look for financial support, what kind of programs are out there, and what kind of availability. And the final module focused on partnerships. So we know partnerships are critical for extension. And so there was coverage of what things you have to think about when you're when you're establishing a partnership, how they end, ground rules, etc., and just how to negotiate all those different variables. So for our final course evaluation, we ended up having about 15 to 50 attendees per session. Now the sessions ended up stretching out from September 11th and all the way through December, pretty much every Tuesday. So we lost some people. We had a higher attendance rate in the beginning, but as things continued, then we started to lose people, especially a lot of them knew that they could attend it or watch the recorded version later. So that kind of explains some of that. And 100% of attendees said they would recommend the course to anyone. And overall, the course was rated 4.1 out of 5 stars. So people were pleased with the content and the subjects covered. And then we had about more than 60% of people agreed that the course was very helpful for their extension and outreach work, and another 27% strongly agreed that that was very helpful for their work. And what do they like? So these are some of the quotes from the evaluation, but people liked being able to watch the modules recording. They liked that they could just do it when they needed to do it. They liked having some of the real examples from the wide variety of presenters. And like I said, some of the modules like on program delivery and evaluation, audience and needs assessment were especially critical for some people who maybe hadn't had that training at all. And then the broad range of experts that were included was something that someone else found very valuable as well, because we tried to cover a wide variety geographically as well as in terms of the range of what people do. We did learn some lessons, of course. It was very difficult to create interaction. We tried some chat groups, and we had some chat groups within the webinars, but you know, sometimes they worked, sometimes they didn't. There wasn't necessarily enough time to really get into good discussions. We created a Facebook group so that people could join it and have some discussions there. And that didn't really pan out too well. Could be that, you know, of course it's, I guess it's Gen Y or whatever, but I guess Facebook is really for more old fogies than the people who were on there. And like I said, it was hard to create a cohort via the webinar, and also because it lasted a long time. 13 weeks was kind of hard to keep people coming every week. And people wanted to come, and we made some connections. And then the range of speakers ended up being really beneficial, and people did find meaning and really enjoyed watching some of the interviews. So the next steps are to create a Moodle course using these webinars. We're targeting that to finish by the end of August. So some of the webinars will need to be re-recorded or have been re-recorded, and some we're able to take as is. We're adding more resources to that, and we're gonna maybe add a few other things, but just to make it available as a full online course. We project that it'll probably have a shelf life of about 5 years or so before it might end up being kind of stale. So we'll have to see how that goes. And that's it for me. So I'm gonna offer up any questions.
One question is from Jody. She says, can you share the recording of the interviews from the trenches? They'd like to share it with their vice provost.
Yes, and I forgot to put a link here. I will share the link with Gwen for both the videos and the PowerPoint, and then the site itself. So.
One question that came in, so were the topics that you created, did they have a specific focus on forestry over program development?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I forgot to mention that. Yeah, the angle was to cover forestry specific topics. So for example, in the audiences and needs assessment, the person who presented on that presented information about forestry specific audiences, natural resource specific audiences. And I would say there was more of a slant towards forestry than even natural resources, and that's kind of how it just shook out with the presenters. So, you know, there probably could have been more natural resource people on the team, which might have made a difference. And we also wanted to distinguish, we didn't want to take over from program development folks who are doing a fantastic job of doing their programs. We wanted to just do some value added angle towards our audience and our specific area.
Another comment from someone, they say that they really appreciate how you recognize the shelf life of the program. Unfortunately, this information does age over time, so they appreciate that you acknowledge that. So of course, we want to thank both Kim and Leslie for sharing with us today, and we'd like to share all of you for joining us today for the 2019 virtual summer school session.